think the place to start is just understanding what neurodiversity actually is. There's a lot of misinformation, misunderstandings, a lot of stereotypes.
There's nothing someone who's neurodiverse can't do, really, right? We just need to provide a space that's better organized.
What neurodivergent employees want is what anybody wants, really. We need to be believed. Like, our experience is real to us, it's authentic. ADHD, dyslexia, Tourette's, autism, they're disabilities. We don't want to say that. We don't want to limit our kids. And so when we call it a superpower, trying to pump it up, we minimize that difficulty.
Today on How Do I, we're joined by Shawn Johnston, a neurodivergent leader navigating autism and ADHD in professional environments. Drawing from his lived experience and with late diagnosis and workplace masking, Shawn helps founders understand how workplace trauma affects neurodivergent employees and what it takes to build a truly inclusive culture. So today's question is, how do I adapt my culture to support neurodiverse employees? So Shawn, we're talking about building a neurodiverse-friendly workplace culture. Tell me a bit about what your experience is with that.
Yeah, so I've been running my own agency now for getting darn close to 14 years. I freelanced for a few years before then, and I worked in different production roles and studio roles before then. So it was about 9 years ago when our son was struggling in school. It's a very common story because it's actually quite genetic. So my son was diagnosed. We got him the IEP that he needed, the individualized education plan, just the support. And then it was sort of like, hey, wait a minute. Some of this sounds like really familiar. So I ended up getting diagnosed at the same time with ADHD. And at the time, I just realized through just learning about that experience and what it meant in terms of how it applied to my real life that I was unintentionally creating a lot of chaos. And that was having a huge impact on the agency. So I rebuilt everything with the team around process, stability, structure. Those things helped me. It gave me guardrails so that I wasn't impacting other people. And the net effect is that it made a really amazing interior culture of collaboration. Everybody knew what was going on all the time, and it really fueled a lot of our growth. But then a couple of years ago, when my wife had gone back to school to become an education assistant, a lot of the training is on ASD, or autistic spectrum disorder. And once again, she was like, hey, some of this sounds pretty familiar. And just going through that same process, we realized, and then I was later diagnosed. And so that again required a whole lot of understanding, analysis, like really understanding how this manifested itself, what I was coping with. And so this time I had to rework how I work within, and how I structure my time, and how I manage my load. And that really had sort of come around with sort of running two companies at the same time. I'd hit a really acute level of burnout that wasn't a normal kind of burnout. And so that really unlocked a lot of innovation and creativity. It kind of got me out of micromanaging everything and really sort of handing things over and collaborating with the team in more authentic ways. And then showing up more authentically as me allowed other people to show up more authentically, because we're about 50% neurodiverse.
Oh, cool.
In the agency. And it just sort of, neurodivergence isn't really the problem. It's just misaligned systems that are, and understanding communication differences and understanding each other better.
Okay. So it sounds like a very personal journey. And I have to imagine that as we go through your learnings, like I bet a number of things would apply to any company, regardless of whether people are neurodivergent or not, right?
Yeah, clarity and communication, good communication help everybody. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Well, so here's the question. So Shawn, how do I adapt my culture to support neurodiverse employees?
So I think the place to start is just understanding what neurodiversity actually is. There's a lot of misinformation, misunderstandings, a lot of stereotypes, and disclosure. I am not a therapist. I'm not just lived experience. So a lot of this is really coming through ADHD and autism, as well as ADHD and autistic individuals in the company. So neurodiversity is sort of a broad topic. It really refers to processing difference, a cognitive processing difference in the mind. How we process different types of information and stimuli is different. And so it's not really a disorder, it's actually a neurotype. And that's inclusive of ADHD and autism, but also dyslexia, dyspraxia, Tourette's, OCD. Like it's a fairly broad spectrum when we talk about neurodivergence. And so where those differences really kind of manifest or appear is in processing information, language, how we speak, what we understand, how we convey ourselves, emotions. Emotions is another type of sensory input, and it could be a really powerful one. Sensory input, lights, sounds, smells, noises, and social cues. So a lot of social interactions. A lot of you neurotypical folks don't realize how much inferred meaning there is in the ways that you talk and do things, and it can be really, really challenging for those of us that take it much more literally.
You know, my son, he has ADD, but the inattentive variety.
Yeah, I'm
And
inattentive as well. Yeah,
okay, and the
yeah,
number of processing things where in a busy classroom, he's not actually going to be able to pick out what's the main thing to focus on in some ways. So yeah,
yeah.
I I bet you I'm going to be able to learn some stuff to help him from this too, which is amazing.
Yeah, the neurodiverse brain processes 42% more information than a neurotypical one. So
More.
yeah, yeah. So the particularly inattentive ADHD, again, that's sort of my lived experience. But for
Yeah.
a neurodiverse person, a really good analogy that I stumbled across once upon a time is like visualize you're in Times Square, you're on the corner, and there's cars, buses, horns, people talking, things
Hmm.
clapping. A neurotypical brain will analyze those bits of stimuli and file it away. And then every time it hears it again or sees it again or smells it again, it says, oh, that's that thing. It's there in
Okay.
that drawer. A neurodiverse brain doesn't do it that way. We process it every time. And so no matter how many times we've seen a thing or heard a thing or smell a thing, we're going to process it again like it's the first time. And that's why in really sensory laden environments over a long period of time, we can get really tired and fatigued. In
Yeah.
kids, this looks like tantrums or breakdowns just
Yeah. Yeah.
because our brains have just had enough.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. So the way that a lot of this sort of stuff can show up in work is literal interpretations. So sarcasm, jokes, implied meanings, like we're not going to get a lot of those things. For those of us like myself that masked and sort of passed for most of my adult life, like you figure it out. It's not an easy process. Like my journey through elementary school and high school was pretty lonely.
Can I ask you real quick,
Yeah.
masking? What do you mean by masking or mask?
So yeah, masking is a process by which we behave like you guys, like neurotypical people. That could be things like repressing stims or tics. When I'm having a conversation with somebody, I'm actually paying attention to how often I nod and make certain sounds so that you know that I'm still listening to you. The way that I will sometimes hold my face or smile or cock my head. These are all things that I learned that neurotypical people need to know that I am listening because my default is this,
Oh, I see.
right? And so I will just stare at you with a blank look
Yeah.
and it just, you know what I mean? And it's not, doesn't work. So it is all sort of those things like also repressing reactions to smells you don't like, sounds that are too loud, noises, uh, buzzing, office lights were one of the most unbearable things for me.
Got it.
So yeah, masking is really just a process of fitting in a neurotypical world, whatever it costs us. There's a lot of neurotypical communication that's inferred. Colloquialisms, inside jokes, tones, generalizations. There's a lot of not using words correctly, right? And you're like, oh, you know what I mean. Like, I don't. So there's all of those things that go into how people communicate that we're working through all the time. So I'm paying attention, like, what is your face doing? Are you looking bored? Should I be changing the subject? Have I nodded recently? So or when you give someone instructions and it's like a little vague, I
Hmm.
have to go through the process of like, well, what are the different things they could mean? Okay, it's probably most likely this based on these other things. And then I try to action on my best guess because asking for clarity often makes us seem difficult and we get in trouble. So that is sort of the literal interpretation pieces that could be really challenging. Slower verbal processing is another key thing. My son really struggles with this, where, he's given verbal instructions and he really has to sort of think through, what do the words mean? What are they asking me? How can I break that task down? What should I start with? And how? So there's always sort of this pause where you're sort of
Yeah.
thinking, but that can be read as something that it's not by people just think that you're maybe spaced out or
Yeah.
ignoring them or not answering or
Yeah.
dumb,
Yeah.
all of those things. Distractibility is another thing. So you mentioned inattentive ADHD. There's also hyperactive ADHD. That's the one most people understand. So inattentive is, as you mentioned, just distracts things, or there's too many things going on. It's really
Mm-hmm.
easy to sort of get distracted. Where hyperactivity is like, I can't sit still. I got to be moving.
Mm-hmm.
So both of those things are ADHD. So being distracted is not always about motivation or not knowing what to do or wanting to do it. It's just sometimes there's just too many things to decide on, or that will pull our attention, or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
And then that can do things like, if I'm in a meeting and there's leaf blowing outside, my brain is processing the leaf blowing noise and how much I hate it. And so then I can't focus on now I've lost my train of thought. I can't, I'm stumbling, and now I don't look as confident, but it has nothing to do with that. It just means that for 5 seconds, my attention got pulled somewhere else.
Right.
The other big one is working memory. So this idea, and this sort of sits on executive dysfunction,
Yeah.
executive skills. That's why a lot of ADHD and autistic children are so far behind their peers, because they have to work harder to build these skills that come more naturally to neurotypical minds. So,
Mm-hmm.
so for me, I don't have internal working memory. I only have external working memory. So that means I have notes and whiteboards. I have reminders and timers. Like, everything that I need my brain to remember has to be externalized. And so when you're in a space or a setting where that's not as easy or not allowed, you have that strain of having to like remember everything that you've been told, and then recall that when you need to. And that can be really hard to do. It's not that you don't know it. It's just being able to access that particular file in the appropriate cabinet, in the right drawer, in the right
Right.
part of your brain. It
Right.
just takes us longer. Um,
Huh.
yeah.
Yeah. My
And then the
son.
last one is
Oh, sorry.
emotional intensity.
Okay.
And this shows up in two different ways a lot of times. So there's persistent or pathological demand avoidance. That's PDA.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
And so there is sort of an initial emotional reaction to being asked to do something, particularly if you're in the middle of another task or focused on something, that creates a really strong angry reaction or frustration
Yeah.
reaction.
Yes.
So there's that. And then something called rejection sensitivity dysphoria. So criticism, slights, not being picked, being
Right.
passed over for something, like all of these things have like a heightened, like you've rejected my soul, is the type of
Yeah.
feeling.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. Yeah.
so
Yeah.
yeah, and so all of these things within a workspace happen all the time. You get feedback, you get criticism, you get pulled off tasks. Like, all of these things will create internal, like, really strong spikes of emotional reactions, and we have to be able to cope with that. So yeah, those are like the main ways these things can show up in a workspace.
Got you. And I'm nodding not because I know what it's like, but because I see what you're saying with my son.
Yeah,
I think everything you're working through with my boy, I mean, like we go, hey, can you go to your room and grab this thing and do that thing and do that thing? And then he'll do maybe the first thing, but then it'll get off track. Do you know what I mean?
yeah, yeah,
And we've been encouraged to use like visual lists and like
yeah. Visual plans, front
iconographic. Yeah.
loading. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. The
And
thing is like, sorry, and
no,
again,
no, 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 it's okay.
I'm really excited about these sorts of things, but like kids can learn the skills, but they're still going to struggle with those things as
Yeah.
adults in a workplace, right?
Yeah.
So, if you're going to change a meeting on me, like, knowing that the day before is going to be way less impactful than now or 5 minutes before it. So that type of front loading, breaking tasks down in more manageable ways. But yeah, all of those things, they just evolve and change. Like, neurodiversity doesn't go away. You're just learning skills, but it's really, most of the time, you're just learning You're learning how to, as a fish, you're learning how to fly in a bird's world. Like that's really what you're doing. It's always going to be hard for you.
And I think the word I underlined is more. It sort of feels like you're saying that there's more sensory, there's more work, there's more paying attention to yourself. It's like there's, and I think I might have defaulted to thinking that there's less processing going on, but you're saying there's more processing, and
That's right.
you know what I mean. And that
Yeah.
that blank look I see in my son occasionally, and that you're talking about,
Yeah.
is like you think that there's less going on, but there's more going on,
No,
which I
that's
don't
just
think
the brain
anybody.
is spinning. It's working on it.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. That's what's
Wow.
happening.
Okay.
Yeah, there's a lot going on, and well, and I'll get ahead of it, but like this can actually start evolving into chronic PTSD because of the way that not being understood can impact you in a lot of different ways. But I'll get into that. I think what I wanted to just touch on in terms of like what neurodiversity is was in particular some of the misunderstandings around the autism spectrum. So
Hmm.
um, there's a large co-occurrence of ADHD and autism. About 80% of autistics are also ADHD. People sort of understand it sort of this linear line from like less autistic to more autistic,
Hmm.
and it's not that at all. Autism is autism. All autistics are the same in that they have autism the same amount as the next one. What
Oh,
what the spectrum is think of it as a color wheel, right?
okay.
And so there's like key spokes in that color wheel, and those sit around speech, noise sensitivity, social difficulty, anxiety, posture, poor eye contact, tics and fidgets or stimming,
Mm.
aggression, depression, and fixation. So all of us will have strengths and weaknesses within that spectrum that will present different ways. But I have autism in the same way the next one does and the next one does, it's completely independent of how it presents itself. My areas of struggle, for me, a lot of that is social interactions, noise sensitivities, like the sensory things. Eye contact's not actually my favorite thing to do. So doing this video stuff makes it easier because it's not really your eyes.
Okay, good.
Um, Tics and fidgeting. So I stim a lot. Like you see me rubbing my thumb. This is a very common sort of safe stim I can do in a meeting. Nobody really notices it,
Got it.
but it helps keep me focused. Um, and that turns into something that's called a spiky profile. And you may have heard this around, but it's sort of like where people have like really high strengths in certain areas, but really struggle in some other areas. Like I'm very good at recognizing patterns and building systems and seeing things other people can't
Hmm.
in a lot of data, but I can barely pay my electric bill.
Mm.
So like personal organization and organizing and prioritizing things I'm not interested in are like deeply difficult.
Hmm.
Recall of information, processing speeds, like I have trouble with all of these things. And so in the workplace, that can look like a lot of times it's like they're so great, but they're so terrible. Like if only they could just try a little harder and be more consistent. But that's that spiky profile, and so there's the areas where we're really really good and we don't need any help, and then there's the areas where we need some different accommodations.
Got you. I obviously I've always been told that autism is a spectrum, so from like less to more,
Yeah, yeah,
basically, which
yeah.
is, I mean, I guess I shouldn't ask why is it taught that way because who fucking knows? But like this is probably enlightening. Like given you say it's a color wheel, like everyone's autistic, but or if they're autistic, but they have the profile differences. Yeah,
That's
interesting.
right. Yeah. And this whole concept of like high functioning and low functioning, like
Yeah.
that's not a thing.
Where
Like
does this
what
come from? Well, I mean, I guess I'll ask the question. Do you know where this
Well,
comes
I
from?
mean, yeah, because it comes down to stereotypes. Like people will look at me and say, like, you don't look autistic. You're a normal person. Like you talk to me just fine. That doesn't. You don't see the anxiety. You don't see the meltdowns and the shutdowns. You don't see the discomfort with eye contact. You don't see the overloads in social interactions. Like I
Mm.
could barely do networking events. I actually have to give myself like 10-minute breaks every 15 minutes. That's the
Hmm.
deal I make with myself. So
Okay.
you don't see those things. But, for someone who's, nonverbal, requires a lot of help making food, um, those types of support needs are what they, typically call like low functioning. They're just different parts of the wheel that they struggle with.
I see.
And so uh, uh, it's all the same set of struggles, the same diagnosis. Just the supports and presentation are totally different. So that's really what that drives it, is this sort of neurotypical default of normal to not normal, and sort of how we will often judge or assess people through sort of that neurotypical lens, like we do with lots of social defaults. Yeah.
Got it. Yeah, my son took, I mean, not as long as you, but it took us a while to get a diagnosis because I guess his wheel colors on the wheel were such that, he didn't lash out or behave terribly outside of the home, and so then
Yeah.
he's fine. I mean, so it just took us a while. Yeah.
Yeah, it's totally normal. I mean, this is one of the reasons why there isn't a default treatment for neurodiversity, is
Right.
because every single person is different. There's no commonality. There's commonality in traits
Mm-hmm.
and presentation and things they struggle with, but
Mm-hmm.
to what degree and in what combination, everyone is a little different, and that's because it's mapped to your neurotype, the way that your brain functions. And so that's why there's no treatment for it. It's really just about accommodation, learning, and skill. That's the word I'm looking for. Skill gaining, skill. You know what I mean?
I think I
Anyways,
know what you mean. Yeah, there's
yeah,
probably a word, but I can't think of it either.
yeah, yeah. So how that feels for a neurodivergent person in the workplace. We talked about masking.
Hmm.
So there's that pressure to fit in, to mimic behaviors of the people around you. Most of us that made it late in life, sometimes a term that gets thrown around called high masking. We just got to be very good performers. Doesn't mean I understand what we're talking about in a social setting, but it does mean that I can pretend like I'm understanding and having a conversation and saying the right things at the right time. So, but other things are like suppressing the stims and the tics. Like when I get really stressed, I do get a tick, an involuntary sort of muscle thing that kind of builds up in my shoulder, and sometimes it can be pretty violent, and it's weird. I'm conscious of it, so I kind of have to hold it in, and that takes a toll. Some people need to rock, or they need to hop or bounce or rub their fingers, and so a lot of us will have what are called safe stims, so things you can't see, like rubbing my toes together in my shoes or rubbing my fingers. People will twirl their hair. So this is just self-stimulation, and it's just a way of sort of calming your nervous system down. But in professional settings, it's kind of frowned upon. You're weird, or that's an odd thing for you to do. So you have to suppress all of that and mask through those the discomfort, and that takes a toll. Things like executive dysfunction, time blindness. Yeah, is it lunchtime? Oh, you got a cookie? Lucky you.
They just made cookies.
Nothing
Bloopers.
better, than a warm cookie. But yeah, like time blindness, really getting lost in a task and losing track of time. Neurodiverse people really experience the passage of time very differently because of the executive dysfunction and the sensory overload. So my timelines are messed up all the time.
Hmm.
There's lots of times where I'm like, haven't seen you in 2 months, and it's actually more like 10 months or a year and a half. Like
Okay.
I
Okay.
just right, the experience is
Yeah.
different. But like in a workplace, like I will literally think that 10 minutes have passed on something I've worked on, and I'm already 30 minutes late for a meeting. So
Okay.
it just didn't pass. Context switching, so being forced to move from one context to the next, and one situation to the next, is really, really difficult.
Mm-hmm.
Moving yourself from one fixation or one piece of attention, particularly when we got ourselves going and we've got momentum, to have to switch that and start that process over again can be really fatiguing.
Mm-hmm.
Social decoding, like we talked about, so understanding the small talk, the inside jokes. And then sensory overwhelm is one thing that I know personally I struggle with a ton. Like my space is quite dark. I have lots of low lighting.
Mm-hmm.
There's soft things. There's no strong smells here. I have a little wax melty back there that kind of gives me a nice smell that sort of keeps me calm.
Cool.
There's no overhead lights. All my clothing is loose. Very specific about my socks and underwear. That's a whole topic for
My
itself.
son as well, yeah.
Yep. And so, you know, like if you're in a workspace where you have to wear a tie or something like that, like ties are just like the worst. I cannot tolerate them for more than a couple of hours. So uncomfortable clothing, you know, dealing with really strong overhead lights, people's perfumes, people talking over there, you know, that kind of sensory overwhelm in an office space can be really, really, really challenging.
Got you. So, I mean, I'm assuming you're getting to this, but my mind goes, well, then how do we support people that have these needs? And if we're not at that sport, take me through what else you got. But that's where I'm going. I'm like, yeah, what do I do?
The only other point I wanted to make, and then yeah, definitely let's start talking about that, was that there is an underlying reality too, particularly if you're wanting to really understand and create an inclusive environment for neurotypical people. I think that you know, what people need to understand is that, and I don't know the exact numbers, it's just popped out of my head, but the vast majority of neurodiverse people are also suffering from PTSD or chronic PTSD. Sometimes that's the result of, you know, actual inflicted trauma from childhood or whatever. You know, neurodiverse people make easy targets for predators and things like that. That is sort of a common thing to have happen. But primarily where most of the complex trauma comes from is a lifetime of not being misunderstood and held to standards you can't meet for reasons you don't understand. And so like that experience over 10, 20, 30, 40 years, it really erodes your sense of self. And, you know, particularly in the workplace, that can look like hypervigilance. It's really always scanning for risks or disapprovals or sudden changes in tone. We are masters of reading the tone and energy of our room to protect ourselves and know how to adapt to what's going on. Perfectionism is a trauma response because growing up we were punished for mistakes. I'm not going to get the number right. I'll get close. But by the time they're 10, the child will have been corrected 16,000 more times than a neurotypical peer.
Wow.
And you imagine the type of impact that would have if you expand that over 20, 30, 40 years. We just are always being corrected because the space that we're operating in is just not aligned with how we need to do things.
My son is 10, the one that just brought the cookies is the one.
Yeah. So that can come out as perfectionism, like overdriving, overforcing yourself, holding yourself to impossible standards, never being satisfied with results. That can also show as people pleasing. So really doing like that was been for me a big mind blower over the last couple of years. I didn't realize how much of a people pleaser I am. Like I get genuinely moved into an unsafe space when I think people are mad at me. And as an employer, I can't make everybody happy all the time. So it's a really uncomfortable space. But these are learned behaviors from being in spaces that weren't safe, that were hostile. And then burnout. So just the sustained length of time. Autistic burnout isn't like, you know, I worked a little too hard this week and I'm a bit tired, I'm going to chill this weekend. Like it's a state of extreme and acute mental fatigue. So late last year when I kind of really hit a wall, doing too much for too long, like I couldn't make decisions. Like the skills regressions were happening. I couldn't process information. There was one night I spun around in circles in the kitchen because I couldn't decide which step to take when making food. And I was just like, can somebody just do this for me? I don't know how to take the next step. So, you know, it is a physical, emotional, and cognitive decline, and it takes weeks or months. Like I had to really take the winter to recharge and heal. And when I came back to work after Christmas, I limited my hours. I reduced the number of meetings I took. It took me until about March to kind of get back up to full speed again.
How did you manage work during that time?
So what that ends up looking like is, you know, meltdowns and shutdowns every other day. It's like a lot of We kind of reconfigured all the lighting in the house, so there was no more big lights and only small lights for the evening. Lots of using noise canceling headphones to help give myself some sensory space. Just reprioritizing being outside, moving my body, getting exercise, sleeping, hydrating. But it just takes time for all of that to just settle down and heal up. So that trauma reel is there, and a lot of what you're doing to accommodate people with neurodiversity in a workspace is also to help them feel safe, and so they can feel safe in showing up authentically as who they are, because they would not have had a lot of experience with that for the most part. And like, school is not made for you. Kids are nasty and they're not accepting. So like it's just to get out of high school without a huge level of social traumas would be a gift. So
what do you think of the people that say things like ADHD is my superpower or whatever? Have you heard that before?
Yeah, it's not my favorite. It feels cool. It's like trying to empower ADHD, dyslexia, Tourette's, autism. They're disabilities. We don't want to say that. We don't want to limit our kids. Don't want to limit ourselves. But anything that keeps me from doing whatever I want, whenever I want, for physical, emotional, or mental reasons is a disability. That's what it is. And so when we call it a superpower, trying to pump it up, we minimize that difficulty. And that's the hard part. Last Wednesday, I had one of the worst meltdowns I've ever had. It was an hour in a room just trying to breathe again. So like that, as much as there's parts of my experience I'm really good at, and it can come across as a superpower, it tends to minimize how difficult those.
There's an influencer, Canadian, I won't say more, but they do talk about ADHD. They talk about having been on medication. They talk about having worked out, and that now it's the superpower. And I go, well, I mean, maybe they don't struggle as much as my son does, because I don't know if I would say it's his superpower. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I know my son never particularly aligned with it either. I think like whatever helps you move forward, whatever helps you like do it. You're not hurting anybody. Like I think like, I'm just like, I did that for a little bit, and I eventually sort of got to it where I'm like, it's not great. Okay. But that's just my opinion. So yeah, accommodating in the workplace is something that we're going to get to the point.
Of course. No. This was great. I'm so glad you started where you did, and it took some time to get here, because I don't know if you hadn't done that, would it then make sense to just talk about accommodations without the other stuff? So this is.
If you don't understand where the struggles are coming, it just looks a lot like they're just being difficult.
Of course.
Which is what we've faced our whole lives. So
flexible
scheduling. So this is one thing that we implemented a long time ago. So we really talk about it in terms of like, you're in an adult workspace doing adult work, so we're going to treat you like adults. And that means I'm paying you for 8 hours. I expect 8 hours. Don't necessarily care when those 8 hours happen. Whenever that aligns with your productivity, that works for us. Just make sure we all know when that's going to be.
Sure.
Right. And so there are some guardrails as far as like overlapping with collaborators and client availability and that sort of stuff. But allowing for flexible work schedules means that they can align their workday with when they're most able to show up for that work. And if they need to bow out a little bit on one day and then come back on another day to make up that time or be flexible, like just allowing for that to happen, because we're going to have good days or bad days. Like if I have a really angsty client interaction, like I'm pretty done for the rest of the day.
I imagine
Yeah. Communication is a huge one. And this was an early win for us. Like a lot of organizations run around with like loose documentation and loose process.
Yep.
And a lot of like you can figure it out, or this is how, like just ask somebody. Like that is really, really challenging. So written expectations, highly documented processes, highly documented policies, when we're going into and out of meetings, making sure that tasks are clearly documented, instructions are clear, summaries from meetings are available, outcoming needs or tasks are checklisted. Like that level of documentation is a little extra work. It's actually really good for everybody, but it's actually critical for a neurodiverse person, right? They need that clarity. I'm not going to have the working memory. I'm not going to remember that thing we talked about last Thursday. I probably won't even be able to remember what I have for lunch on Wednesday. Right? I'm not going to connect things the way that you do. I'm going to connect data and information in ways that make sense to my mind. It's not a linear process based on a timeline.
When you talk about the documentation and tasks and checklists, this is something that we do. I don't know that we do it well enough, but we do have quite a bit of documentation. But one of the things that we find is that like people don't often come back to they have a hard time remembering to go back to the repositories of whatever Asana or whatever thing. What do you do with that part?
Sometimes complex systems are more work than they're worth. We found the most effective documentation is just a folder of Google Docs and just literally writing it out. That creates a really easy way to be able to ask questions or search for certain terms. When it's in a complex framework, like in Asana, and we're talking about like, okay, so we run the same process for all of our web projects. And so those tasks are documented in our project management system, and everyone knows what task means what. But the documents that stitch the whole thing together are just simple documentation in Google, and everyone collaborates on them and makes changes. There has to be clear ownership on that. And then again, like, we all know where that information is. Before you ask somebody, you need to check there first. So that's just part of those expectation settings. But for a neurodivergent person, like those become Bibles. Those become really key places. But it also means it has to be accurate. So if it's vague or missing steps or it's not super clear, it's actually more hindrance than it is a help. So it's really that clarity. I think the thing, particularly when I leave notes for myself, I write it to myself like I'm 5. So it is as crystal clear and broken down as I can make it, because I know my future self's going to thank me for that. I cannot tell you the number of times I've read a note and been like, I don't even know what I was talking about.
That happens to me too.
That's totally meaningless. I don't know what that is. So yeah, because it's that literal black and white understanding of things. We can work from that, but if the basis that we're trying to make decisions from is vague, then it's just quicksand. It's really, really difficult.
So like when we talk about communication, it's obviously being clear, but then also writing it all down makes sense.
Yes. Yeah. And one of the, like, normalizing AI transcriptions, like, it's not a privacy thing. It's not being published on the internet. I just need a way to be able to reference what we talked about. So for me, this was like being able to transcribe meetings, both internal and external. The only exception are like one-on-one reviews where we're actually talking about, and even then, if the other individual is okay with it, then I will transcribe it just so that I'll be able to reference it at a future date. But being able to like not shame people for having them or sort of making jokes about AI or like it's doing your work for you. Like, I need a way to be able to go reference that information because it's not going to stick and I can't take enough notes.
100%.
Right?
But there's nothing like, and so we use AI note taking on everything, and so there's nothing that beats dropping a transcript in ChatGPT and asking it questions about what we talked about. Like, that's my favorite.
It's completely changed my life. Yeah.
Cool.
So sensory safety is another one. So like scent-free spaces are really important. There are certain colognes or perfumes like I just cannot be around. Like I avoid a section of Metrotown because I cannot walk past. There's certain like body sprays that people wear that like crawl up my nose like an animal trying to tear my brain out. Like I just cannot be around. Like it's a visceral, soul deep reaction. So if I had this, like I remember when I worked at Future Shop a really long time ago, there was one woman that worked there that wore this rose perfume, and it was like she was marinated in it. Like it entered the room 2 minutes before she did. It was like it was just that strong. But when I was in meetings with her, I could not think because I was so overwhelmed by the smell. and my discomfort and the pain that it was sort of giving me. I just could not focus.
And for you,
Um,
it's not the, was it a bad smell or was it just the way that it interfered with your processing?
like some smells are worse than others. Some smells can be really good and
Mm,
distracting in a totally different way.
okay.
It's the strength of the smell, at least for me.
I see.
That's my experience. So
In
like
your color wheels, that's one of the things,
that's
right?
right. Yeah, it's like think of the strength of smell like the brightness of light. The brighter the light, the
Oh,
harder it
okay.
is for me to put up with. So the stronger the smell, the harder it is for me to
Oh, I
put up
see.
with. And
Okay.
artificial smells, like perfumes and colognes, chemicals, they affect me in a different way than natural smells,
Mm,
like trees or animals or food.
interesting.
So the artificial smells are really really challenging, and it's quite common in workspaces for people to walk around with cologne and
Yeah.
perfume, and yeah,
Yeah.
it gets or like deodorizers in bathrooms, like some of those
Yeah. Yeah.
tablets, like just can be bleaches, like they can be pretty intolerable. So,
Got it.
but yeah, like uh, sounds, like if it should be okay for me to put noise canceling headphones and not be available while I'm focusing on doing production work because I don't want to listen to eight people talking over there, or
Yeah.
being able to relocate to a quiet room where I can be left alone and focus on it. So
Mm,
those the chatter, the talking, like light fixtures buzzing, mechanical sounds, printers, somebody tapping, water flowing, like all of those things layer on each other. I'm processing all of that, and it can get
mm,
really, really overwhelming, particularly when some of them are loud. So, being able to wear noise canceling headphones on the job, at work, in a call, with that being an acceptable accommodation. Softening lights, like overhead fluorescent lighting, is genuinely like the worst thing to be around. So, being able to or have access to soft light areas, quiet spaces, sensory rooms, like having a place that I can go and retreat to when I just need to kind of reset.
mm.
Like those can be a really, really valuable accommodation, which is why why I've always really liked working from home is that I can exist in a low sensory space all day long, without needing to sort of grit and bear it in a shared
Got it.
space.
And
Um,
I imagine as it relates to work as well, that you would want your like Slack notifications turned off and things like that.
I have a couple of my own. I have to be available. I have a couple of my own. It's like, yeah, there's certain types of notifications that are more distracting than others. I have two monitors on the side, which is where the communication sits, so I can keep my focus where
Oh,
I'm
cool.
working.
Hmm.
But I sort of see those things on the side, so it's like not distracting. And everyone will have different versions of that. Um, but like the last thing, like the last really helpful accommodation that we can make is sort of accommodating or adapting to different communication styles. Um, so like if you're giving me some really strong feedback, like not making me give you an answer right now, like give me some time. I'm going to sit
Hmm.
with that. I need to process it. Like my processing time slows down when stress goes up or emotions go up. Because now I'm not only processing the information, but I'm also processing the feelings I have around it. And I'm also processing the fears and anxieties I have around what you're feeling and what that might mean for me. Because I'm now going to be in a little bit of an unsafe space.
Mm,
Not that you delivering feedback is inherently unsafe, it's just historically for me, it is an unsafe environment. So
right.
being okay to reply asynchronously, not requiring me to be or people to be, I keep saying me, not requiring people to be like instantly available, like Slack statuses and really
Yeah.
respecting those, allowing people to block out time for production where they can be, unbothered or focused. But yeah, allowing for processing to actually happen. Front loading people, front loading is a really, really good tactic. So like if I know that I need to give somebody, so like this is a classic one. Hey, can we talk tomorrow? I need to chat with you about something for 5 minutes. I'm going to stress about that from this
Yeah.
moment
Yeah.
until then.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I will rehearse it. I will play out every possible conflict that could be. It's never what I think it is.
Of course.
So that's where sort of clarity and front loading comes in, where you could say, do you have time tomorrow? I need to spend 5 minutes to talk to you about how we handled that client interaction yesterday. I have some ideas that we can workshop on, and sort of not allow me to fill in those blanks for myself.
Got
Right? Or like if you know a meeting or a deadline is going to change, maybe like if you told me on Tuesday, hey, you know that deadline on Friday, it might move to Thursday. I'll let you know by tomorrow morning. Instead of telling me tomorrow morning, it's now Thursday, right? So front loading, preparing, all of those things just allow, like all of these accommodations are really about allowing us to be successful, right? That's what it is. We all want to be successful. I want to do good work. I want to make connections with people around me. I want to participate. I want my work to be valuable. I want to be valued. But I need to be able to operate in certain ways or communicate in certain ways for that to happen. And that's all we really want. So these accommodations are not about like lessening the requirements. It's just changing how they're delivered and collaborating on how that works, because, you know, we're just needing to recognize that brains work in different ways, and that's okay. If you can set someone up to be successful and tap into those things they love, their special interests, their focuses, and their productivity, the company's only going to benefit for that. It costs you nothing to provide information a certain way or be okay with certain ways of being.
Well, and I mean, like I look at the accommodations like flex scheduling and communication and sensory safety and some of these things, and I don't see anything that wouldn't also benefit neurotypical
It
people.
does. It benefits everybody.
This is what I'm saying.
Best
Like,
part. Yeah.
I think, but is there anything, would you add anything that may not help anybody else? Like that would just help someone who's neurodiverse? Like, is there anything like that that you would like?
A lot. The sensory stuff is the hardest part, honestly.
Okay. Oh, okay. Okay.
Right. So, you know, some of that is providing a certain latitude. Like if I know, like, I don't know, say I had to go to a birthday party last night. There was 15 people there. They screamed for 13 hours, and I'm just done. I cannot be in an office space today. Like being able to say, I need to work from home today because I was at a party that overdid it for me. Like that type of accommodation would be very specific. Like, you know, if it's just a neurotypical person, it's like, you stayed up too late. It's fine. You'll need to come in anyways. But like that is recognizing that I have actually over socialized. That had a real impact on me. It's the same as having a cold or having a migraine or, you know, any of the other things that we completely normalize as sort of a common human need. Where it's not making me feel like I'm just being a snowflake, right? It's a real thing. So having to sit in an office when I'm over socialized and overstimulated and sit in an office, all of the lights and the sounds and the distractions, those are going to be 10 times worse. And I'm going to have to work 10 times harder to get through this day. And it's that cumulative effect. So that's sort of the big one. It's that the socializing and the sensory piece, those are sort of the main differences that would be quite specific to a neurodiverse person.
That makes sense. But even so, I mean, right. I see neurotypical people benefiting from the same thing anyway.
I don't disagree, but there's many fields of thought on it.
So there's nothing someone who's neurodiverse can't do, really, right? We just need to provide a space that's better organized and especially on sensory safety and things like that, right? Like
So I think mostly what neurodivergent employees want is what anybody wants, really. We need to be believed. Like our experience is real to us. It's authentic. These are the things which I'm not being difficult. You know, we want clarity. We want it to be okay to ask clarifying questions so that we know what is expected of us. So we're not having to guess. Guessing is really stressful because the downsides to guessing wrong aren't great. So you know, we just want clarity, and that could come across in lots of different ways. We want to be trusted. We may not carry the task out the way that you would, but does it really matter if the results are what you're asking for? It might even be better than what you're expecting. So we need to be trusted. We need to be included in those strategies. We don't necessarily want somebody to say, "There's a sensory room, enjoy." Like, we like anybody with a disability, we want to be included in the conversation and to co-create and lead what strategies are most effective for us. And those might even change from day to day. There are some days I'm a veritable social butterfly. I'll mix it up and I'll love it. And then there's lots of times where I'm like, don't talk to me until 11, and then don't talk to me after 2. Right? But we really just want, and what neurodiverse people really just need is to have a safe, shame-free way to say, I need help or I need space. Right? And we just want to be able to work in an environment where we can do really great work in a way that works for the way that we process information without having to pretend like we're someone we're not the entire time. And so, if that's, I need to stim for a meeting, I need to rock for a little bit, I got to put my headphones on for a bit. Like it's really, it's about being able to do those sorts of things in a shame-free, judgment-free way, because that hasn't been most of our experiences for most of our life.
I don't think I share a lot in terms of experience. I think there's a very small slice of shared experience, which is I fidget in meetings just because my body hurts when it stays still for so long.
Yep.
And I have often wondered that if I'm taken less seriously in a meeting full of executives where I'm shifting in my chair because my ass hurts. Do you know what I mean? And like I say, I think it's a tiny overlap between what you're talking about. But even that alone, I'm like, am I taken less seriously just because I shift around? Do you know? And then to
these are things that I think about all the time.
The weight of the rest of that, I don't know what that's like. But wow,
yeah. So we touched on this whole superpower thing. Like, there's some things that we hear all the time, or that I hear all the time, that drive me crazy. Like everyone has a little ADHD.
Yeah.
Or everyone's a little autistic. Like we're all human. We're all sharing a fundamentally human experience.
Yeah.
It's just the way that we experience that existence that differs. And so that's really kind of what we're talking about. Like what I experience as an autistic ADHD person is not different than you. It's just different to me, in terms of what that experience means for me. Right? It looks like some things that you do because we're all human. We all experience the world the same way and do things in similar ways. One other thing that will happen sometimes, I've gotten much more comfortable with disclosing and asking for help, but what I will sometimes get back is infantilizing. So like I'll get high fives and props for doing basic stuff. And I'm like, I'm not an idiot. Right. I'm letting you know that I'm a little stressed and what we're talking about is a bit triggering. And if I'm getting a little wooden in my tone, it's not because I'm angry, for example. So like, infantilizing is something that people will sometimes do. I was actually talking with a friend about this. Not all of us pursue diagnosis. Not all of us know or want to talk about or share for lots of reasons. So like an expectation of disclosure is also not okay. So no one owes you that type of information. So, if you work with someone that you suspect or think, like it's not okay to approach them about it. That's information that they'll share, they won't. But I think like any employee, if you can see they're struggling in a certain way, it's just a conversation to say, notice you're having these struggles. How could we sort of help with that? What would be something that would make that easier for you? And then you just sort of work through that, whether we have a formal label for it or not. It's really just about trying to set an employee or a team member up for success in a way that sort of taps into their into the best version of who they are. Yeah.
One thing I wanted to ask, which is you mentioned you were 40% neurodiverse at your company or more?
Oh, again, that's not an official number. Again, sort of expecting. No, so again, we've got, we talk about it a lot, particularly over the last couple of years, last 9 years, I've just been quite open about it. I think I found it is easier to explain why I do things some of the ways that I do, or the way that I
Totally.
think things, and sort of collaborate with people in the ways that make sense. And so that's just created conversation. So and accommodation. So yeah, yeah, I think like a third, not quite half. I was maybe
Okay.
being a little
And
bit
and is
exaggerating.
are people just finding you organically because they know that you're accommodating, or are you recruiting, or like what? How would you do? You know what's happening, or like,
That's a good
or is it
question.
just is everybody a third and we just don't know it? Like, you know what I mean?
Well, I mean, I will say this. I'm 48. I didn't know I was autistic until I was 46. So
Wow.
for 26 years, I worked in places without having any understanding. And looking back
Wow.
now, I can see why I got passed over from promotions, why I failed in different ways, why I struggled in different ways, why I got
Sure.
the feedback that I got, why I struggled to make connections with the people around me in workspaces. Like I can see it.
Mm.
But, it took me until I was 46 to figure it out because, when you're hyperverbal or good at masking, or you've just, been successful despite it all, and not aware that your struggles are actually more pronounced than other people because it's not like we all sit around talking about it. Um, you just, I remember where I was going with that. You don't arrive at that. So, you just exist in those spaces. And
Mm.
so, yeah, there's absolutely a lot of people that would be undiagnosed neurodiverse across the whole spectrum, whatever it
Okay.
looks like. Yeah.
Uh, Anything you would add as we come near to the end here?
Um, yeah, I mean, I think it's really just approaching it with curiosity, right? Like we're not, and this has just always been my approach to trying to build a workplace culture. Um, I want to create something that I could be successful in. Like I want to approach things and work with people in a way that I would have wanted to when I was 20 or 24 or 25. So, um, and all of the things that we know make strong friendships, good collaboration, some of the strategies that we teach our kids now in school, um, like all of those, like it exists in the workplace too. And there's sort of this holdover from the boomer generation where you're just supposed to grind through things and like,
Yeah. Yeah.
just like, I don't know why that culture still
That's an interesting
exists,
point.
right?
Yeah, because like it's like school has IEPs now, but work doesn't.
No, no. In fact,
Freaking
you'd be
weird.
penalized for it, right? Yeah. So
Jesus,
we
that's a
have
big
this sort
shift.
of rise and grind, like mentality where it's like, I mean, like some things are different. Like COVID changed come into work when you're
Yeah.
sick. Like that's not cool anymore.
Yeah. Yeah.
Lots of inclusivity and DEI and like all of like we know way more, but underlying that, yeah, there's
Weird.
still sort of this, not always, I'm not painting everybody with the same brush, but just from my own corporate experience, like it's
Mm.
not, yeah, that those accommodations are not there, and
No,
asking
you're
for
right.
them isn't super cool. And it's a really good way to get missed out on promotion
Yeah.
or opportunities if people feel like you're struggling in any sort of way. So you
Mm.
are, um, um, like we tend to reward people for charisma,
Mm-hmm.
and contribution, but that can come in lots of different ways.
Mm-hmm.
Like the guy that produces beyond anyone else, but never comes to any team events because they don't want to. Like those
Right.
types of people tend to get passed over for the people that mix it up and can cheerlead. So yeah, it's really just normalizing that everyone needs different things at different times, and that's okay. And you only make a stronger and safer work environment by
Hell yeah.
collaborating that way.
Absolutely. Okay. Well, I think, we've covered a lot of ground, and I think yeah, maybe we don't know all the things we need to know about making it accommodating, but I think we
Yeah,
know a lot more than we did.
yeah.
So thank you for sharing all that. Shawn, where can people find you or get in touch with you? And what are you working on right now that you'd want to share?
Yeah, I mean, right now, so besides the agency, we did launch a SaaS product earlier this year. It's called
Hmm.
Refoundry. It's a low-code, themeless site builder for WordPress. It's a platform that's helping agencies deliver digital projects faster and more efficiently in today's marketplace. So,
Hmm.
really focused on getting that launched. We're doing a pre-seed raise
Cool.
soon. Seeing some nice early traction. So yeah, it's been lots of fun. It's a new thing for me. Um, and like systems and things like that's my special interest. So I'm just having a really good time with that. So that's Refoundry, refoundry.io.
Hmm.
You can find me on LinkedIn. I'm pretty active there, as well as my email at
Great.
Shawn with a W at refoundry.io.
Amazing. Thank you so much. Well, Shawn, thanks, man. I really appreciate this time with you.
Oh, it was fun. Thank you. Yeah.
You bet.